Dear audience, here with you again, Cristina Rangel, speaker in the United States of El Paso del Norte chapter of the Global Network of Mexicans Abroad, a program managed by the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the Mexican government. We keep going on with the interviews with worldwide experts to let you know the challenges and threats that represent climate change and global warming. In the previous interview, the first of a series, Dr. Alberto Correa, president of the El Paso del Norte chapter, presented the basic concepts regarding this subject. We invite you to follow our first interview in, our social networks.
Many thanks, Christina. Thank you to the audience for their continued interest in the materials that we are presenting and our messages. So, Christina, let's start up.
Dr. Correa, how is affecting global warming water availability in different regions of the Earth?
Well, we need water to live. That is obvious, no? And even when water covers, 3/4 of the surface of the Earth, less than 1% is potable water, drinkable, okay? The rest forms part of the oceans or is frozen in the polar caps. This potable water is part of rivers, lakes, aquifers, and underground deposits. A bit of it is collected as rain, or it is desalinized and recycled. We have to notice, you see, that more than 2 million people on Earth population has no access to potable water. This is a tragedy, But on the other hand, drought and floodings dangerously threaten the potable water sources. Why? Well, this is because global warming accelerates the seawater evaporation, okay? So what is happening is that all this vapor goes into the atmosphere, forms very, very heavy rains, which in turn, has very heavy precipitations, you see, very heavy precipitation around the Earth. This water coming as tornadoes and hurricanes, that's the reason why hurricanes, you see, are now increasing and we're having more and more and more violent, the water that they are precipitating into the ground is much more than that the ground, can absorb. So what is happening? Well, that since the water cannot be absorbed by the ground, well, it is flooded. It creates, heavy flooding. At this time, water gets contaminated. Once it is on flooding, it gets contaminated, either with wastewater, waters, and other substances, like fertilizers or pesticides, among many other contaminants. You see, that contaminated water, runs into rivers, lakes, and eventually to the oceans, polluting them and limiting their availability to the ecosystems that live off of potable water. In other words, the water cycle is severely altered as global warming advances.
What are the long-term consequences of global warming on human health?
Well, climate change and global warming is seriously threatening human health. Why? Because it worsens, existing illnesses. It accelerates the distribution of pathogens, microbes, viruses. It especially in new non-contaminated regions. The most vulnerable, to these health threats are children, are senior citizens, the old population, the poor people, and those who already have health problems. Okay, extreme heat worsens the quality of air. That affects, respiratory illnesses like asthma, cardiac deficiencies due to low blood oxygenation, renal failure, and premature child delivery. These, among many others, causes. Okay. And all this happens in rural and urban areas. It also alters the ecosystems and stresses human social services. And therefore, we also have, some stresses like, for example, increasing the risks of forest fires has severe psychological problems. The people lives, thinking that there's going to be a fire, and their houses are going to be destroyed, as it's been happening, in a lot of places in Canada or in California or whatever. It also promotes infestation, you see, of pests like flies, mosquitoes, bedbugs, and many other dangerous insects. The freshwater springs, as we said before, they get contaminated with residual disposed waters. The water contained in sports facilities, like swimming pools, it gets contaminated with pathogens, even that you keep treating, with chlorine or fluorine. Not to mention, the contamination in agricultural and cattle, poultry, and all animals, are growing regions. And of course, its byproducts, meat, eggs, and that contamination severely threatens, the food supply chain.
What is the impact of polar ice caps melting on sea level due to global warming?
Glaciers and polar ice caps, melting raises the level of rivers, lakes, and oceans. For example, if we consider, the last global warming period, that happened several hundreds of thousand years ago, because this is a natural phenomenon that comes in the earth, but a very long range. The sea level was 10 meters or 30 feet higher than it is right now. This means, that all important cities in the world, as global caps and glaciers, keep melting, all the cities will get flooded, given that they are either in ocean coastal regions or are located at the shores of rivers and lakes. But also, melting of this eternal ice, which it happens to be made out of fresh water, when water, solidifies, freezes, it turns into fresh water. And when they melt, this fresh water will go into the oceans and will decrease the level of salt concentration. But unfortunately, or what happens is that salt concentration is the one that produces sea currents. And sea currents, are the ones that define the weather in the whole planet, because the hot water in the equator, goes up to the polar regions and the opposite. So the water is circulating like this and is producing, the changes in weather. These changes in sea currents, in addition, modify the whole marine ecosystems, from which basically, depends on the main percentage of oxygen generated on Earth. I mean, oxygen primarily is generated in the sea. Okay. For example, we have the Great Coral Reef in Australia. The nice coral color is fading because the salt concentrations is lowering down. And that is a sign, that these corals, are suffering and eventually will die, with catastrophic consequences for the whole planet, because in this coral reef, there is plankton, there is a lot of, the reef is huge, there's plankton, there are small, tiny vegetables, and they are, they are the ones that are producing oxygen.
Perfect, Alberto. What are the governments and international organizations' role in the fight against global warming?
As it has been established to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade or Celsius, ever since the signing of the Paris Agreement by over 200 nations in 2015. However, surprisingly, at a world level, the closing of the year 2023, the rise of the overall temperature was already 1.2 degrees. There's only 0.3 degrees, to reach the maximum level that was set up, over in that meeting in 2015. The signing countries, therefore, have agreed to lower down, to accelerate, the actions they have to do to decrease global warming. And one of those actions is to lower down the carbon dioxide emissions. And as we described in the first interview, the main greenhouse is carbon dioxide. And in order to reduce that, we have to reduce burning of fossil fuels for transportation and electricity generation. Fossil fuels are petroleum and mineral carbon, coal. This is called to reduce the carbon footprint. And that means, accelerate electric generation by renewable technologies like solar, wind, and hydrogen, and the substitution of the internal combustion engines vehicle, the cars we use today, by electric ones. Reduce carbon dioxide emissions in cement production. Cement production produces, 7% of the overall emissions of carbon dioxide in the world. Reduce methane emissions, in cattle growing. We explained, you see, in the first interview that methane is 10 times worse than carbon dioxide. And among others, methane is emitted, by cattle. In order to reduce emission, you see, a lot of research has been done to modify the feedstock. We have to expand the services of public transportation based primarily on electric vehicles. We see that many cities in Europe are doing that. We have to stop deforestation that is ending, among other things, with the first Earth's lung, the Amazon wild forest, Promote reforestation, planting new trees, due to the fact that the vegetable kingdom absorbs carbon dioxide and emit oxygen. This is the basic principle of plants, They absorb oxygen, and through chlorophyll, and the solar radiation, they convert, carbon dioxide into oxygen. Sorry, adoption of fiscal policies, through taxes, to the society, that so that on one hand, with that money, governments, countries, can foster the carbon footprint reduction, and on the other hand, have money, financial programs available, for developing new and emerging technologies. These are among many other things, but are the main ones.
And what measures can be taken at a personal level to fight global warming?
At a personal level, we can do a lot of things that not only impact, in reducing global warming, but also can provide economic benefits to ourselves. We say that we have to apply the 3 R's: reduce, reduce, and recycle. Reduce our fuel and water consumption, because we don't know, unfortunately, how to shower. People goes into the shower and the water, hot water, keeps coming on. We do not know how to wash the dishes the same. We don't know how to wash the clothes. We don't know how to wash the cars, with the hose, lots of water. We don't know how to brush our teeth. The same thing, lots of fresh water, the disposing, without using them. And please, you don't clean the curb, the curb outside your house with a water jet coming out of the hose. No? The second R is reuse by selecting products that come in recyclable containers like metal and glass. The third R is recycle. Recycle all that can be recycled. Metal, paper, glass, plastic, and even some families prepare their own compost out of organic waste. What is compost? Well, the people use, all the organics, they put them together, mixing with dirt, and then they form their own fertilizer, for their own plants in their gardens or in their pots, We can use less air conditioning and heating, insulating walls and roofs. We can try to install low energy consumption light bulbs like LEDs, which are available. We can buy low energy certified household products, refrigerators, washers. Let's drive less our cars. Our cars burn a lot of gasoline, and they are the first emitters, of carbon dioxide, and use our cars rationally, reducing non-necessary riding. Just walk a little bit and not accelerating full throat, to burn less gas. For example, when the car stops in a stop sign, and at the moment the green light comes, people goes full throttle, without necessity, burning a lot of gas. Just by applying, these concepts, we are going to be saving a lot, So let's use less hot water. Turn off lights, when nobody is in the room, so that your light bill will come down, obviously, Let's plant a tree. Trees are basic, for helping against, global warming. On the other hand, ask for help to the electric company to rationally consume energy. Let's encourage our families, friends, neighbors, and people in the social networks to follow these advices, please.
Excellent, Dr. Correa. We really appreciate these advices. Are there some additional recommendations you would like to consider?
Yes, Christina, thank you so much. By all means, we can consider some general recommendations, Consider that the solutions agreed by the countries do not make significant changes in the short-term basis. That means that when they put in practice, policies like we already discussed, the most optimistic goals, to get those changes effective in the environment is a 5-year horizon, This may be very far already, considering the point we have reached. We have reached, a very critical point regarding pollution and global warming. So in the period between right now and up to 5 years in the future, many things may happen, In fact, they are already happening, For example, you take the newspaper and look for the reports of the animals in the zoos. They are dying. The animals are dying because there are no means to cool them off in a general basis, On the other hand, the polar bears. You have seen the pictures, with the babies, That is a species that is in extinction. And the worst, in this period, this 5-year period, the planet will continue warming up. We have to keep this message in mind all the time and spread it to the whole society. This is a problem that concerns everybody, and that everybody is severely affected. Let's not give up to global warming. We have to fight for our health. We have to fight for our people. We have to fight for our ecosystem. Consider that in the last global warming, 2/3 of living species on Earth disappeared. It is to us making sure that the human race will not one of those that will become extinct in the very near future. Thank you so much, Christina, for taking the time to spread this message to the society. In future presentations, we have invited specialists in each field to let the people know in a more detailed way what our Earth is facing right now. We thank everybody to follow us through the social networks and other digital channels that responsibly form part of this campaign defending our home, the planet Earth.
Thank you, dear friends and public in general. We will keep going with more specialist interviews and different subjects, informing us of threats that represent climate change and global warming.
Thank you so much.